Hey Tyler, thanks for grabbing some time.
Of course. Let's talk about AI and MIACON.
Yeah, we went last week. It was super great. Um, I'd love to kind of maybe just like talk through our top three takeaways each. Maybe
Yeah,
we can just like go back and forth.
yeah,
What would you
for sure.
say was your number one or number three takeaway?
Number one or number three, I like it. Okay, so they're kind of what the overall feel that was cool about MIACON this year. So I've gone a couple of years, including some online stuff, but um the main thing the takeaway was like the community feel. And
Yeah.
like we've all been to conferences, all been to events, and it's like kind of a little bit more like everyone's just trying to get claw and get their own thing out of the deal or whatever.
Mhm.
And the whole event felt so much more like a community where, hey, let's help each other through this and get better at it together and share what's going on and yada yada. And obviously you still have to conduct business and there's some competition maybe in the room and all sorts of things, but for the most part in the whole, no one really knows what's going on because of it's all new and everyone's kind of in the same boat. So the community feel of that. And then like a specific takeaway within that for me was one of the somebody was presenting and kind of talked about like basically working together as a team. And one of the specific things was creating a prompt library. So if anybody, if you're familiar with ChatGPT and some of the other AI tools, you have to know how to communicate with it to get the outcome or result you're trying to get back from it. So maybe you're writing a question in a certain way, or you're asking it, maybe certain kind of guiding things as you're going through it. But sharing that as a team, or maybe keeping like even departmentally or like, job function or something like this is what I'm using or typing in or adding, and this is what I got from it, just so that people can kind of all share with what they're learning from it. So I thought that was a really cool, like super tangible takeaway. Also part of that like community figuring it out together versus feeling like you have to have it all together to show up. So
Yeah, I really liked that too.
yeah. What about you? What's your one or three?
I guess number three takeaway, because it's not as fun as the other ones, is that there's still a lot of ethical and legislative things that need to be sorted out with AI. And I like we all know that, and different countries handle things differently. But instead of like being afraid to dive into it, I think the thing that I took away is like as humans, I think we intrinsically know the right thing to do. Like when you're being shady and when you shouldn't do something. Like
Mm,
most people know that. So really being thoughtful with it and not like using it for good.
mm,
Um, but still like it's not a person, so you need to check things. Like there are bias sometimes that are built into AI because the internet is biased. And so
mm,
when you're using anything that's created by something that's not a human, that you need to check it. So like, are you constantly referring to people in one gender versus the other? What about race, like
mm.
and ethnicity? How is that interpreted and represented? And so that was super interesting to me. And then also, of course, there's a lot of info around like data privacy and how that's being used. And so, like, larger orgs might be a little nervous to dip their toes in the water, but still to find ways that maybe don't harm proprietary information or customer or client data,
Mm.
ways to be able to incorporate it to your teams to start to use it. So, like, it needs to be handled wisely and well, but and it's going to take a long time to get it all sorted out, but there's some
Yeah.
really smart ways that you can still use AI, but it just needs to be checked by a human.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I like be in that room when they were talking about, I think there was a specific one, and it might have been like probably generative AI, maybe like image creation or something like that. And I think one of the examples they used was like, hey, create an image of a, CEO of a tech company or whatever. And it was like all white guys in their 50s. Like it was kind of like all very, very,
Yeah.
the same. And I thought what was cool about it is if you're in that room, it really felt like that's, oh, wait a second, that's wrong. Like it was almost like like a rally cry kind of moment of no, 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 hold on, that's wrong. Like the information it kicks out's wrong.
Yep.
There's it's by like you kind of all know right away, like this is a problem.
Mhm.
And I think being in those environments is kind of cool because in some ways for me, it does give a little bit of a shot of like, oh yeah, yeah, there is the amount that's reported that's bad going on in the world. There's things that are good going on in the world. And being in a room like that, knowing like there's that many people that are fighting for or have like that value system, morals, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
um, was really cool. So I totally, that when you said that, I was like, oh, that's right. That feeling in the room was really cool when they talked about that and then had that reaction that people did. So yeah, echo that for sure. I think it leads into one of my top three, which was there was a lot that was talked about around, like, I think they call them AI councils in organizations. So kind of like a, think about like a board of directors or a, like a, guiding, group of people that would help steer you in the right direction. And, depending on the size of your company, you might not, have enough people to have an AI council or whatever, or, you're all stretched super thin anyway. But I think one of the things that my takeaway from that was really just outlining your guiding principles. So what's, your guardrails that you stay within or stay between when you're using some of these tools. Because, it's one thing if you're going, oh, I'm just going to have it help me write copy on a blog post or edit this or check for grammar here or whatever. And it's entirely different if you're having it, create stock footage for a, B-roll for something, or represent. I mean, we at this point are starting to see different people that are using generative AI and kind of just throwing it out there, and they might think it's funny, but it's having a negative impact
Right.
on the organizations or the individuals or whatever that it's might be unintentionally targeted at, which you kind of really do have to pay a lot more attention to that kind of stuff. And so I think just as individuals and then as organizations and teams, having kind of like those guiding principles or values that you would use as filters to kind of what tools you're using, how are you using them, what outputs are okay and what aren't, and just like so many of those types of things in an organization, I think is super valuable. So that was one of the ones I took away, just kind of like that team dynamic, values, principles. And then like if you're a larger company, really starting to form like a real kind of AI council to help guide some of those things and oversee it. So
yeah, I liked that too. And I think as larger organizations are, it kind of leads into my next point, or takeaway. As larger organizations are thinking through how to implement AI, like we've already seen it happen where it's been terrible, where they just decide, like a large org decides to get rid of an entire department and replace it with AI. Like it's not the smart thing to do. Like don't do that. But when we're thinking through what kinds of tasks that AI takes on, to think of it more as a task support or a task doer, not necessarily a human replacement. Because the kinds of things that AI is really like great at accomplishing or doing are things that have, like you've already talked about, like having a prompt library, really specific instructions where we have a really intended outcome. It's just that there might be a lot of steps to get there, and we know that a computer can do that. So not helping us necessarily build very strategic plans or things that are, require deep work or deep think, but getting rid of some of the things that maybe are just algorithms or things that are very monotonous tasks. And I liked that, because I feel like a lot of people's jobs right now, they feel like their jobs are at risk. Like, oh my gosh, AI is going to come in. Like, I'm a knowledge worker. AI does knowledge work. It's going to take away my job. It might take away some tasks of your job, but then it might enable you to actually do your job better or more fully. Cassie Kozyrkov, I think is her name, had a really great talk that she gave, and she compared it to thinking versus thunking. Like thunking, you're just like, I gotta do this, and it's very monotonous, boring. But thinking is like the deeper thinking of like, how am I going to apply this to fix this problem or to solve it? And so that like we should be focusing on thinking jobs and allowing AI to do the thunking jobs, things that are just like monotonous, that that we just have to do, that we have to, the hard work that we have to do right now to make the thinking happen. And I just thought that was so powerful.
Yeah, no, that's solid. That's super, super true. I feel like there was, some big lessons or big themes that we're sharing. And then I also think there's like these like little takeaways that, I mean, we did this one and we brought it up a couple times and we laughed about it because we were talking about like using GPT and asking, hey, explain this using, for me, we were laughing, we were doing golf analogies. So can you explain blockchain using, golf analogies? And like, it was funny what it came out with. And like, it was actually kind of relatively true of like, oh, wow, this is actually makes sense. But I think just like so many people I see using all sorts of AI, almost like a search engine and just asking it questions. Whereas in like, no, like maybe flip it a little bit more and have it explain things, write outlines, create strategy, like, And I'm saying all these things knowing that I'm one that has been paid for all of those things over the last, number of years. But I think like that is one of those jobs where you go, well, like, can it work alongside of you and help improve what you're doing, or get you to think about it differently, or help you explain things easier, or whatever that looks like. And so I think like it was for me, as you kind of learn how to use some of those tools in tandem with how you're normally functioning, it does allow you to go, oh, actually, there's a place for this. Like there's a reality where this can exist and makes what we're doing better, more efficient, better impact, or more impact, better results, whatever. And it's not just oh my gosh, it's coming from my job and I don't get to work anymore and this is ruining my life. But I think it does require that mindset where you're open to change and adapting to what you're doing and getting it better and improving along the side. So that was kind of like, I guess, and then there's like a million tools that, that I think Mike Kaput did like 45 tools in 45 minutes or something. It was like rapid fire. It was awesome, actually. But I think one of the takeaways from that session for me was, how do you evaluate software tools in this AI space and emerging space? And somebody brought up an example in one of the sessions that I was at, and they were talking about how, using kind of different filters to evaluate tools and like knowing if it's AI or not. But one of those filters being, with the advent of some of the efficiencies that can be created with AI, you can potentially not have as large of an organization, and create a cool product or great service, but maybe not have as large of an organization. And they were talking about how that's such a problem for them because they need support. And so they want to be able to reach out to someone. And if it's, so-and-so both working part-time jobs and they just decided to launch this product, you're probably not going to get as great a support or development of that product as like I'll call it in quotes, a real company over here that's really like going after it and has like a customer success team and like many of those types of things. So I think there's lots of those like pickups throughout the week that it was like little, like, kind of sound bites or whatever that helped kind of go, oh yeah, I'm tucking that away for not just chasing the, the shiny marketing message that came out from a software tool, but maybe, having some different variables to how to evaluate it. So I thought that one was cool too.
Yeah, I really liked that. My last takeaway, I think, is really simple. It's just that AI might do some of the work, but a human is still the artist. And I loved that
That's good
thought, because humans are still the ones that are going to determine what should get put in the world. Like, hey, this is the image that AI generated that I tweaked, but I selected this one out of the 60 ones that it created because I feel like that one's art. And I feel like that, or it represents this. And so that even if it is something AI generated, it is still human championed and usually directed. So even though some of the heavy lifting might be done by an automation, humans are still the ones that are curating it.
Yeah, for sure. No, that one's really good. So all of this, in summary, it still requires humans to operate this at this point. Maybe it looks different in 5 years, but at this point, it still needs a human filter to be able to hit the real world. So
awesome. Well,
cool.
I'll see you later.
All right, see ya.